I do have certain basic matters of conscience that are firmly entrenched, and I wouldn't perhaps want to be willing to change them. But on most practical issues, like Afghanistan, for example, these to me are there's a lot of pragmatic, practical issues there as well. With Afghanistan, I could understand the argument for supporting our American allies in Afghanistan. I knew full well the issue of what would happen if Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, and the Taliban then were able to knock out Pakistan, a nuclear-armed state. Well aware of that. But if you're going to go into war, if you're going to send young men and women onto a front line and put their lives on the line, you've got to send them in it to win it. You don't send them with half the equipment they need. You don't send them in telling them they've got to buy their equipment. And so that's on that issue. That's why I take the issue. I would support it if it was being done in a just and proper way. But one of the theories of a war, the just war theories that was propounded by philosophers, is you don't go into a war that you cannot win because you're just wasting lives. And that's the approach I take to many of these sort of issues. But the one thing that is often said to me as an independent is that you can't win here. This is a true blue Conservative seat. Well, some of you may recall the by-election in Massachusetts that took place in the United States earlier this year. It was a Kennedy seat. It had been in the hands of the Kennedy family for years. And Ted Kennedy was the latest holder, and of course he died, and so there was a by-election. And the Kennedy family selected somebody that was going to carry on the tradition for them. And the television interviewer was speaking to an independent candidate, and he said to him, "What makes you think you can win the Kennedy seat?" And he said, "This is not the Kennedy seat, this is the people's seat." And he went on to win that election. And I think this is echoing what Martin was saying earlier on. It is up to people. And I, like most people, just absolutely shocked and horrored with what's been going on. I don't feel I can vote for any of the parties. And by standing as an independent, somebody said to me, well, at least you can vote for yourself if you can't vote for any of the parties. I just felt that I'm giving people an extra choice. Those people who share this feeling that they can't vote, but have always voted, and I've met many people like that on the doorstep. I felt a lot of support. A lot of people say, I'd like to support you, I've always voted, I just don't know what to do. And so they now have this choice of an independent. But one of the other stumbling blocks I'm coming across is that people say to me, what can you do as an independent? I really would like to support you, but what can an independent do? Well, Martin has indicated some of the things that an independent can do. And Dr. Richard Taylor, the Kidderminster MP, actually sits on the Health Select Committee, a very important committee, and he plays a very important role. And those committees can sometimes be more important than what happens in the chamber of the House itself. But when people say to me, what can you do as an individual? My reply to them is, what can any ordinary backbencher of a party do as an individual? And I'd like to give a classical, practical example of where power lies, and that is what's happened in Macclesfield with the hospital. You may remember the proposal was to close the maternity and children's ward, which of course would eventually lead to the closure of the hospital as a whole. And I and another, Muriel Clamper, who was a councillor, we got together and we decided we were going to put up a fight and we were going to run a campaign. And I'm sure many of you here may have been involved with that campaign. A lot of people came together. We raised 70,000 signatures against the proposals, closure proposals. At the final stage, when the consortium, there was a Greater Manchester Consortium, of course one of the arguments was what was Macclesfield doing in a Greater Manchester Consortium, but when the consortium finally met to decide where the closures would take place, we went along and the chairman of the Cheshire Primary Care Trust announced that she had to withdraw Macclesfield from the consortium because of this huge volume of protests which could not be ignored. That was a protest, and that, incidentally, it was a protest that was strongly supported by Nicholas Winton, and he gave us a lot of help, and he did his part in the House of Commons. But what was interesting is at that same meeting, there was a certain cabinet minister there, Hazel Blears, and she had stood on the picket line protesting against the proposal to close Salford Royal's maternity and children's services. But when it came to the vote, she couldn't vote for it. She couldn't vote to stop it because she was a member of the cabinet and she had to follow party policy. And that's why I say that an independent is free to go outside of Parliament, to galvanise people and to bring attention to matters which may otherwise lie dormant. If you're a backbench member and you're a young middle-aged person, or you've got a family, you've got children going to university, you've got a mortgage, you've got a career, you're not likely to risk it over issues like that. You want to keep your nose clean and you want to further your career. You just look at me and you realise I'm not looking for a career. I've had my career. All I'm looking for is to put back into society something for the many benefits I've received in the past, to use my experience that I've had in the public sector and the private sector and my knowledge of political affairs that I've gained. I want to use that or put some of that back into an area where I think I can do an effective job. I've lived in this constituency for 40 years, and incidentally I never claimed any expenses as a councillor. To me, it was a public service. And when I got elected, first got elected as a councillor, I rang my mother to tell her, you think she first, instead of saying to me, congratulations, well done, she said to me, never forget where you came from and never forget who put you there. And it was important to me. That was an important thing, that it was the people that elected me. I was there to serve people. I enjoyed doing it. It was my hobby. It sounds a bit, maybe that's something that didn't sound right, but it was something I liked doing. Some people want to go to a football match and spend their time there, or go in the pub and discuss world affairs, or tend their garden. We are all different and we all have different likes. I just happen to be one of those anoraks who likes to go to committee meetings and discuss things and do something. I particularly love taking up cases on the behalf of individuals, and that's why I'm offering to stand, and I hope I will get your support. And if you do agree with this approach to politics, if you do agree with the things I stand, and if you do judge me on my record and think that I should be elected, then please tell your friends the same, please tell your neighbours, please tell your family, please tell everyone to come out and vote for me, because I do need every single vote I can get. There's a huge mountain to climb, there's a lot of misunderstandings to overcome that I referred to above, but it is doable, it is achievable, and if they can do it in Massachusetts, I'm sure they can do it in Macclesfield with your support. Thank you very much.
If you would like to help Brendan Murphy's election campaign, email brendan@voteindependent.co.uk or call 01625 262 173. You can also follow Brendan on his Twitter at vote4, number 4 that is, B Murphy.